Hello, welcome back to Shock's Talks. I'm Shakti, and today we're going to talk about the Pope. So there's a new Pope, and News Nation interviewed Daniel Sheehan about this possibly being the Pope for disclosure. I want to break down this interview because Sheehan speaks really quickly, and I want to really dig into what he said because there was a lot of significant information dropped. And I also want to break down some of what I learned about the Pope. This is just purely from this News Nation interview. So they set it up with a little bit of backstory about why this Pope picked his name, and I'm going to share it because I think it's interesting. So there was a Pope Leo before this current one. He ruled for 25 years at the end of the 19th century, and he was known as the social justice Pope. So this current one picked his name based on that reason, that social justice part of it. And they also talk about another significant piece of information, which is that previous Leo is the one Pope who established the Vatican Observatory. So today they have all this state-of-the-art equipment in both Rome and in Arizona, which I found interesting. Then they talk about the Vatican Archives. So the archives were expanded just last fall, and this was based on Pope Francis authorizing an expansion. And the archives already comprised of 50 miles of shelving. So when I heard that, I was like, what does that mean? I need to wrap my brain around that. So I did go to ChatGPT to get a little help visualizing this amount of knowledge. And I learned that right now the shelving is approximately 53 miles or 85 kilometers long. And much of the archive is housed underground in a 2-story fireproof reinforced concrete bunker. So in order to visualize this, I asked ChatGPT to create some comparisons, and it gave me Manhattan Island, which is approximately 13.4 miles, 21.6 kilometers long, and the Vatican shelving would stretch the length of Manhattan nearly 4 times. How could any human fathom that amount of information? I don't know if any one person ever could, but what's happening now is that, of course, archivists are digitizing all of this information. And as AI is advancing, I'm sure AI could analyze all of that quite quickly. So what are they digitizing? Books, files, and parchment papers. Then they get into how Grusch told the Congress that the Vatican was part of the cover-up. So we all remember David Grusch testified in front of the US Congress, a whistleblower coming forward about secret programs, special access programs, and basically the long-term US government cover-up of crash retrieval programs, which is ongoing today. The interviewer asked a question to Sheehan being like, oh my gosh, is Grusch the only one? And why do people take it so seriously? And Daniel Sheehan was like, actually, there are 40 other, let me go to that exact note, 40 other top secret classified experts from deep inside the federal government in various agencies who have already come forward and testified in secret to the Senate Intelligence Committee. Okay, so it's not just Grusch, but we all heard about Grusch, and so that's where we heard about the Vatican being a part of the cover-up. And they refer to an interview that News Nation did where Ross Coulthart interviewed David Grusch, and they show a little clip from that in this video. And in that clip, Grusch talks about how this cover-up started because in 1933, the first recovery happened in Magenta, Italy. And that was a partially intact UFO. And I've heard about this 1933 being the first time crash retrieval was starting. And usually we think of it as having a start in the 40s, 45 or 47. But this has come up a few times. So Grusch says that the Vatican does know about the existence of non-human intelligence on this planet, most certainly. And they do share a quote from the Vatican Archives spokesman who basically just says, haha, I don't know how Grusch got that idea, but the exact quote is, I don't know where Grusch got this information. One can laugh at it. So, okay, whatever, we're used to that. Then they get into the spiritual implications. So the interviewer is asking Daniel Sheehan, should the Vatican be concerned about aliens being real because it contradicts the teachings of the church? And then he dives into some of what was going on with the teachings of the church. So first of all, he talks about how the first and second century theology that was developed by the church was happening at a time when most people were illiterate and never traveled, and there was the formulation of these esoteric insights about the nature of human consciousness. So this is the part that gets really interesting, because we've talked about consciousness here on Shock's Talks, and it's one of my primary interests when it comes to this phenomena. And whether or not consciousness phenomena is an explanation for aliens or ETs, it's definitely a big part of what we humans need to understand in order to know ourselves and to have a better and clearer picture of where we land in this whole galactic community. So in order for us to integrate into this new understanding that we are here among other civilizations, we really need to know ourselves. And part of knowing ourselves is recovering and uncovering that ancient truth that is found in so many spiritual traditions around the world that really speaks to our capabilities. So it's cool because Sheehan is getting into this in this interview and talking about how the Catholic Church and the theology there has their own take on telepathic communication. He calls it the communion of the saints. Reincarnation. The church might call it life everlasting. The ability to levitate. He gives the example of Jesus walking on water. And the ability to transmute matter. For example, water into wine. Here's a quote from Daniel Sheehan. These are capabilities that deal with the deepest scientific secrets about the relationship of human consciousness and the subatomic nature of reality. This is what's in the process of coming forward, and that's why many of the institutions of power on the planet right now are so reluctant to open up that box. But the church has a fundamental responsibility to be the ushers in of a perception of our relationship to the universe, in our human consciousness, to the evolution of our species. So what he's saying here is that these capabilities, human capabilities, which we're hearing more and more about with like the telepathy tapes and all the other psi games and psi revelations that are shared at big conferences, and all of this stuff about using psionic assets to summon UAP. Well, there's a whole bunch of these things. That's the box that he's talking about us opening up as we step forward into this new understanding. This phenomena, that all of the stuff that I just mentioned, is part of what Sheehan calls the deepest scientific secrets about the relationship of human consciousness and the subatomic nature of reality. Now, this part is so interesting to me because he seems to be making a direct link between our consciousness and the very building blocks of the reality we experience. That's fascinating. That's incredibly empowering to humankind. I would love to see us lovingly and carefully and respectfully step forward into a reality where we understand and have access to the functions of consciousness that he's speaking about here. It's so cool. And he's saying this is what's coming forward. So when we think about disclosure, we all think, oh, we're just going to learn more about the crash retrieval program. Well, we may learn about the truth that many large institutions around the world already have the knowledge of, the truth that we humans have these great capabilities. It's really cool. He's saying a lot here. And he's also saying that those big institutions have a responsibility, and the church is one of them. And they have to be the ushers, like to bring us forward into that next level of our evolution. So in November 2009, I believe he's speaking about the Vatican here, says something along the lines of, now with all of our advanced telescopes, we've been able to see more of these exoplanets, and we will now discover life much sooner than we had previously anticipated. So because of that, the time has arrived for the conversation to begin. Now here, Sheehan answers a question that was in my mind because I'm thinking about the influence of the Pope, and I'm like, how many people does the Pope influence? Well, it's 1.4 billion people. And they get into this conversation about, like, do the archives belong to the Vatican? And actually they belong to the Pope. And, well, could the politics block him? And Daniel Sheehan basically says, we'll see. It's very much like when a president comes in and meets the new cabinet and learns how to navigate the disposition of that group of people at that time. This is exactly what the Pope has to do with the College of Cardinals. And he believes that this Pope will try to lead the entire human family into a better understanding of our place in the universe and the relationship that our human species is going to play in relationship to the entire non-human civilization that surrounds us outside of our solar system. So again, he's confirming the fact that there's an entire civilization that we are about to step into, being a part of, knowing that we are a part of. And he talks about this whole disclosure plan. He kind of gives us a much bigger picture than what we usually have when we're zooming in on, like, US disclosure. But it's all part of a global disclosure. And he mentions other world governments and institutions that will be opening up about these things over the next 5 to 6 years, along with the US government. So let's see. Basically, Daniel Sheehan's big message here is that we need to create a post-contact worldview. And we need to do it in a really careful way, and we need to be ready to engage in a mutually respectful and mutually beneficial relationship with the non-human cultures. And one step towards that is to establish treaties with all of the other major world governments that agree not to use any of the technology from recovered non-human craft for the creation of weapons. So that's one of the big problems right now, because according to one of the whistleblowers, that's exactly what the US government is in the process of doing right now. Trying to use anomalous tech to create weapons that will establish military dominance over the planet. Ugh, it's exhausting, isn't it? So, fortunately for us, there are great people like Daniel Sheehan who are fighting for this other version of reality where instead of everyone, the great powers that be, just battling towards our ultimate destruction and creating a really embarrassing entrance for us into this non-human civilization that surrounds our solar system, there could be a better way. And if you're interested in that better way, I think you should definitely go straight over to the New Paradigm Institute's website and sign up for their newsletter, because that is the organization that Sheehan runs and co-founded. And let's talk about who he is. So, a reminder, he is an attorney. He is also one of those social justice warriors and civil rights lawyers, and he was the general counsel to the U.S. Jesuit headquarters in Washington. So in the 70s, President Carter asked him to contact the Vatican and find out what they know about UFOs. And I've heard him tell this story at the UFO conference that I saw him speak at. And I've definitely gone over it on a Shocks Talks long ago, but let's go over it again because we're learning these stories because they're important. So why did President Carter want to reach out to the Vatican? Well, he had seen a UFO. He and 11 other people saw a craft a football field distance away. And so when he got into office, he asked the head of the CIA at the time to brief him. And that CIA director was George H.W. Bush. He refused to brief the president, saying that the president had no need to know. So this is like the disposition of the cabinet at that time kind of vibes, you know? It's like, this person is not going to be helpful. The mood is, no, we're keeping the information to ourselves, need to know, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is what we've heard from quite a few presidents. Because of that, Carter asked the head of the Science and Technology Committee of the House of Representatives, and he asked them to set up a Congressional Research Service investigation of all of the documents on this phenomena. So, you know, like today we have Arrow, before that we had ATIP. We just learned about Immaculate Constellation, which is the secret version of collecting all the data on UAP and whatever life is behind that phenomenon. Well, back in the 70s, Carter is saying, give me all you got. I want all the information on all of this stuff. So that's when Daniel Sheehan gets a call or gets contacted at the Jesuit headquarters in order to go. He's the person who is nominated to go talk to the Vatican, basically. And he gets the authority from the Jesuit order to send a letter to the Vatican to ask for those files. So that's his history. That's like kind of what got him on this path of caring about this information. And now we have maybe a disclosure pope. We'll see what happens. If you're interested in this kind of stuff and you like what you heard today, please like, share, and subscribe, and go check out my other videos. Everything's chronological. The episodes are numbered, and I have playlists under podcasts or playlists where you can go and look at a season or look at like a topic. Sometimes I think I just have like recap episodes and then the seasons that I've created. So anyway, thanks so much for being with me. See you next time on Shocks Talks.